Ember Moon was on WWE Backstage this week. She's been out since September after suffering a ruptured Achilles. She was part of a segment with Renee Young, Booker T, and Mark Henry, talking about moments or matches that they wish they had back to do over again. And this is what Ember said. This is the quote that's making some news. She says, "I've been here 5 years. I could go back and say, yeah, I should have been the one to beat Asuka's streak, or, I could say, oh man, me and Bayley from SummerSlam, I wish I could have done more." Says, "I think about my injury currently and realizing that I may have a career-ending injury. I'm coming back from the hardest injury and I might not have a chance to redeem myself for all the things that I wanted to do." And she started to get a little emotional and cry a little bit, and Mark Henry tried to give her a pep talk and said, "You got a lot left in the tank." One of the all-time great promos. "You got a lot left in the tank. I don't want to hear this. You're going to make it back." Booker T was tearing up a little bit. He was getting emotional because Booker helped train Ember Moon. Booker helped train her. She cut her teeth at his Reality of Wrestling school in Houston. At the time, it had a different name. It was still the PWA, if I'm not mistaken. But so he has that personal connection to her and wanting to see her succeed, and hearing her talk about this devastating injury and the fact that her career may be over and she's still a young girl. Yeah, if I'm Booker, I can understand why that would be a tough thing for him to hear. And it's really sad. Achilles injuries are some of the worst types of injuries that an athlete can suffer. I know it's really bad if you're a football player or if you play a sport that relies a lot on speed. If speed is important and you play a sport like that, you can never really get that back. And in a lot of cases, it could be a career-ending injury. Now, wrestlers have come back from it. Edge, right? We see Edge back on TV. Edge had a pretty severe Achilles injury many years ago, about 10 years ago, actually. Came back from one 10 years ago. Xavier Woods is out right now with an Achilles injury. So I hope that she can make it back. She's only 31. She's going to turn 32 this summer. What makes this worse, though, is how this happened. That's what makes this worse. She had just come off a string of losses on TV. She lost something like half a dozen matches in a row. She was getting the big Ruby Riott push that Ruby's getting right now. She just was losing match after match after match. She calls herself the She-Nom. There was nothing she-nominal about this woman in the way she was being booked on TV. She was being booked to be a loser. She was losing every match she had. And I don't know if the losing streak was leading anywhere or not, but Ember is a SmackDown star. She gets a call to be at Monday Night Raw to put over Lacey Evans. Okay, this was during the wild card rule phase. "We need you on Raw. Why do you need me?" "Okay, you're going to lose to Lacey Evans." All right, fine. Lacey was getting a push. She wasn't. Fine. So she does that. She's getting ready to go to SmackDown. And they tell her, "Hey, we have you booked for the 24/7 title chase this week, where all the cartoon characters on the roster chase after R-Truth or chased after Carmella," whoever the champion was at the time. Carmella had just won the title the night before. "We have you booked for a 24/7 chase on TV." And she thought, "Really? You need me for that?" And she said it was just one of those things where she's chasing after R-Truth. She comes through the curtain. She was running fast, too. Apparently, she had told R-Truth before the segment, you better run, because I'm coming after you. So she is running, and she comes through the curtain, doesn't realize how close. Like, she comes through the curtain and says, "Oh, shit, they're a lot closer than I thought." And she tried to put on the brakes, and that's when she felt that pop. And she ruptured her Achilles. Didn't even know how bad the injury was until it swelled up a few days later, and she couldn't walk on it. And that's when she found out. Imagine your career coming to an end. Just imagine this. Imagine your career at such a young age has come to an end because they had you chasing after the 24/7 title on television. I don't think I could live with that idea. I really don't. That would be motivation enough for me to do anything I could in my power to make sure I came back, even if it was just for one match at a live event, just so I could say that was my final match and not that 24/7 title nonsense. Like, we'll do the finger poke of doom. If I can't do much, we'll do the finger poke of doom spot. I don't care. I can't let my career end like that. That's what I would be thinking. I think she'll be back. She's young. I have faith that Ember Moon will make her way back. Before I get to this week's NXT, I have a few thoughts on that show. Let me talk about a former NXT star who did an interview recently. She was one of the names released last month from WWE, Taynara Conti. Over a month after being among those released by WWE, she gave an interview to the Ring the Bell, B-E-L-L-E, Ring the Bell YouTube channel, and talked about her frustrations with how she was being used, or rather the lack of being used. And she had a great quote that I thought was worth sharing, because for somebody who did not come from a wrestling background, didn't even know what pro wrestling was, she thought the initials WWE had something to do with prostitution. I'm not kidding you. That's what she said in the interview. Somebody asked her one day about hey, what about WWE? And she thought it had something to do with prostitution, and she wasn't interested. She said, no, it's really not for me. Okay, so that's how little she knew about this going in. But she had a background in judo. And how she got noticed was somebody in WWE's, I guess, front office saw some sexy photos that were taken of her from a photo shoot that she had done. And that's how she got signed. That was the signing process for WWE. Now, I'm sure once they met, they learned, oh, she's got an athletic background, judo. She's a very driven girl. But I love it. Like, that's how she got noticed. Some creepy dude in the WWE front office was, I don't know what website he would have been on, but he's looking and he finds these sexy photographs. We've got to have her. I didn't know that was still the sign-up process, the recruitment process. I know that was the case years ago. Like 10, 12, 15 years ago, that's how they recruited the Diva Search days. I didn't know that was still how they're searching for some of these ladies. But apparently they are. So we got to see her a little bit on NXT television, not too much. Fightful had posted a story back in January that Conti had walked out of the Performance Center after a disagreement that sources claim may have been financially motivated. On the podcast, though, she talked about this, and she says that she was not happy with how she was being used, and she got a couple of weeks off. They gave her a couple of weeks off. She came back, and she decided, because she wanted to think things over, is this still something I want to do? This was not just a 2-week vacation. She wanted to clear her head, think about, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do with my career? 2 weeks later, she comes back and she decides, all right, I'm ready to give this another shot. And then all of a sudden, the story popped up on social media about her walking out after a disagreement. And she didn't understand why they were putting that out there. She was very confused. So that's when she came up with this new gimmick. It was the released gimmick that she started doing, where she would wear a t-shirt that had the word in like big, I think, red letters, released, across the shirt. She wore handcuffs, I guess as some sort of metaphor for her, creatively being handcuffed by NXT management. It was to present a release from who she was, like she's breaking free from the shackles, I guess. Anyway, she just started doing it. And she went to them and said, listen, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm doing at like the live events. And of course, they didn't like that. They didn't like that idea. So she had to stop doing it. But I give her credit for coming up with, she took the initiative. She tried to come up with an idea and it got shot down. But she was just trying to do something to get noticed. But she had this great quote in this interview. She was growing very frustrated by all of these new signees, all these new talents that they were signing and bringing into the Performance Center. And all of these new talents that had more experience than her, who were being signed, and she just kept being passed over. So she went to management and she said, hey, what about me? And she says their response was, well, there's people coming in with more experience than you. They have backgrounds in wrestling of 10 years or more. And she says in her mind, I guess she didn't say this to them, but the first thought that she had in her mind was, if you keep signing people who have 10 years of experience and you don't use me, why do you sign people who don't come from pro wrestling? Ding, ding, ding. Yes, that is a very smart question, young lady. You need to stop asking questions that make too much sense. I thought that was just such an intelligent question. I mean, it seems like common sense, but I just thought that was such an intelligent question. If you sign all these people you're plucking from the independents, from this country, from the UK, from all of these different places, who have 10, 12, 15 years of experience in the wrestling business, then what did you sign this girl for, other than you liked her sexy photos from the photo shoot? Why do you sign people who have no wrestling background at all and then not use me? That was her question. That is a very good question. So I watched, it was on video. I watched most of the interview. She seems like someone who has a smart head on their shoulders. I think she'll land somewhere and she'll probably do well. She's got the athletic background, and I hope she lands on her feet somewhere. It might not be in pro wrestling because obviously she's not married to the business, but I just thought that was such a logical question for her to ask. I wish she would have asked them. I would have loved to have known what their response was. That probably would have been, maybe the reason she didn't ask it was because it would have been, we wish you well in your future endeavors, which they ended up doing anyway. But I just thought that was a very smart question for which there is no logical answer. I know they pluck people from football. They pluck people who they think are so athletically gifted they can sort of teach them how to do pro wrestling. That's why they do it. The other reason they do it, or they used to do it, is because they see these sexy women who they think will look good in lingerie. Back in the day, I mean, they would walk around half naked every week on TV. So if you had a nice figure and you had that sex appeal about you, you didn't even need to know what wrestling was, and you'd get a contract. And I think to some extent, it's definitely different now than it was back then. A lot of the women they sign now, they do have experience, or they do grow up as wrestling fans. We've heard Sasha Banks. We've heard that so many times, and that's cool. That's cool because she's a wrestling fan. Sasha Banks is a huge wrestling fan. Bayley grew up a huge wrestling fan. Charlotte Flair, she was born into a wrestling family. Becky Lynch, right? Always wanted to be a wrestler. Got severely injured. 7 years went by. She says, I think it's time for me to give this a shot. You like to see good things happen to people like that who are driven, who have a passion for what they do. To see Becky Lynch, get as high as she got coming from that, that's a cool story. But I just thought, well, what a great question.